Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. How's it going, all you minties? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions, and join me today for my overview of the DC Versus Marvel Omnibus. So let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. As promised, here is my overview of the DC Versus Marvel Omnibus. And I did ask on my Saturday stream if people still wanted me to do it, because I know it's been out for over a week now, and I got it a couple of weeks ago, but I ended up losing my dad, and just everything changed, and I didn't know if people still wanted my thoughts and opinions on this. So thank you all that reached out on Saturday and said that you still wanted me to make a video because you were curious what I thought of the book. And one of the questions I did end up getting on Saturday is with the trim size of this. So this is just the trim size of an omnibus. This is actually being published by DC Comics. So I'll have it right next to a DC Omni. This is one of the latest ones that just came out this week. But to kind of give you an idea, yeah, it's the same trim size, like, you know, the same height and the length. And like I said, published by DC. So let's get back to this. And this spine, I've seen some comments online when they released the dust jacket design. I actually think it reminds me of like the video games like Marvel vs. Capcom or X-Men vs. Street Fighter and things like that. That's what this reminds me of. And they're done by different artists. I love that you have a mix in here of classic artists and you have like modern artists. So it's not just classic art in here. You have a representation of just different artists through the different eras. And one of my favorite icons down there is the Fantastic Four, represented by The Thing. So the other thing that I did was, I kept going back and forth. Which cover should I get? Which of the dust jackets should I get? Of course, there's a soft spot in my heart for that nostalgic George Perez cover on the left-hand side. But when is the next time I'm going to see Jim Lee draw Batman versus Wolverine? Or for that matter, the Dark Phoenix with Darkseid, Wonder Woman, and I mean, if we spin it all the way around here, the Hulk and Deathstroke, Punisher, Daredevil, Cyborg. I don't know when the next time was going to be, so I said, okay, you know what, let's just get the direct market, since what's going to be really showing on my bookcase is the spine of the book. So that's why I decided to go with the direct market. But more power to you if you got the George Perez one. That's the one. That's the one I was going to get until very last minute. But everything underneath the dust jacket is the same. So here are the flaps, collecting stories from these classic issues. So it tells you what's collected in here. And then more of the characters, although these are the amalgam characters, because the action continues in the DC vs. Marvel, the Amalgam Age Omnibus. And that, I believe, is now coming out in December, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have this poster here from John Byrne. It was like, I think this is a promotional poster where they had all the DC characters on one side and all the Marvel characters on the other side. And I can't believe the Shaper of Worlds made it on the cover. That's awesome. But this, again, being John Byrne. We're going to crack this book open. I'm going to share some of the stories, or I talk about all the stories that are in here and look at this artwork, the build, and, of course, all the extra goodies in the back of the book. Okay, let's go ahead and get this omnibus open. And here are your end sheets. DC versus Marvel versus DC versus Marvel versus DC. I love that. I love that it just kind of wraps around. It's a nice little touch. And I love the fact that we have this special end sheets. Never, at least not for the next 20 years that I think we were going to get this. Just because of the way things have changed with the industry. You know, this was I wouldn't say it was a common thing, but it was a lot more likely to happen in the 90s than now. Now we have, you know, different corporations that own these publishers, so it's a lot different. And we are very blessed that we're living in the age of the collected edition, the golden age of the collected editions, where we do have stories like this collected. So here's a little bit of a taste of what's to come, the DC versus Marvel Omnibus. And then, golly, just look at all these creators. Kicking it off with Jerry Conway and Ross Andrew, of course, Dick Giordano, Mark Farmer, Jerry Serpe, and Gaspar Saladino. I mean, you have so many legendary names here. Len Wein, Chris Claremont, Dennis O'Neil, John Byrne, Chuck Dixon, J.M. DeMatteis, Marv Wolfman, and George Perez, just to name some of the writers. And then the pencilers here like Barry Kitson, John Romita Jr., John Byrne, Mark Bagley, Daryl Banks, Ron Lim, Scott McDaniel, Graham Nolan, and your inkers like Dick Giordano that I already mentioned, Joe Sinnott, Terry Austin, Klaus Janson, Bob Wyzak, and Eduardo Barreto, just to name a few. And your colorists like Jerry Serpe and Glynis Oliver, but also Steve Olive. It's just insane that we have this much talent, but you kind of expect to have this much talent in one book, right? Whenever you're having the big two clashing, or I guess teaming up, but fighting at first, right? And then, of course, your letterers over here. I've already mentioned Gaspar Saladino, but my favorite letterer of all time, Joe Rosen right there, and Bill Oakley. John Byrne lettering his own stuff. Richard Starkings, who's a legend in the field, and editors at the time. Over here, you have your table of contents with the Hulk smashing through, or rather, kablamming through. And your table of contents will tell you where each of the stories is going to start and where it originated from. For example, you have the Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man introduction right there by Jerry Conway. And this is from the Crossover Classics. So not only do you get new forwards and new introductions, but you also get the collected editions introductions, the ones from these collections here, the trade paperbacks that are long out of print, and now you don't have to worry about hunting those down, because they're here. But also where the storylines originated from and when they were published. So one thing you're going to notice is that these books originated from like 1976, and then we get like 1981 all the way into the 1990s. And we even get the January of 2000 King of New York story right there. And that is the Daredevil Batman story. So you do have this wonderful introduction by Paul Levitz, who was there at the time. Not a big key player at the time that this was happening, because it was unheard of, but a huge player nonetheless. And then you have the Dick Giordano introduction here from 1991, Tom DeFalco and Jerry Conway. And of course, Jerry Conway writing the first story. So the credits are given when the stories actually kick off. So you have the cover with this frame around it, the DC Versus Marvel. And you have the very first one right here, which is Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man. So collected here for the first time in omnibus format is Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man #1, Marvel Treasury Edition number 28, DC Special Series 27. And if you're thinking, wait a second, Marvel Treasury Edition 28, what the hell is even that? Marvel Treasury Edition 28 is the second Superman and Spider-Man story. And then the DC Special Series number 27, that is the Hulk and Batman story. They were just called that at the time. Marvel and DC Presents, featuring the Uncanny X-Men and the New Teen Titans #1, Batman Punisher Lake of Fire #1, Punisher Batman Deadly Nights, because one is Batman Punisher, the other one is Punisher Batman, kind of like Spawn Batman Spawn. Deadly Nights #1, Darkseid versus Galactus the Hunger. That's such a unique story. The storyline of Spider-Man and Batman #1, Green Lantern Silver Surfer, which helps kick off that DC versus Marvel storyline. Unholy Alliances #1. Still, that's the Green Lantern Silver Surfer story, by the way. Silver Surfer Superman #1, Batman Captain America #1, Daredevil Batman #1, Batman Spider-Man #1, Superman Fantastic Four #1, and the Incredible Hulk versus Superman 1, and Batman Daredevil 1. This book has 960 pages and retails for $150. So to kind of give you an idea as to what is in this collection, we do have Spider-Man, or Superman versus Spider-Man. And a lot of it is very tropey, but I don't care. It's wonderful. You had somebody, I love how they picked the writer and artist. You had somebody that had worked on Spider-Man and somebody that had worked on Superman. Because at that time, writers and artists were going back and forth between Marvel and DC. So they were like, okay, Jerry Conway's going to write it. Ross Andrews going to draw it because he's drawn both of the characters. Dick Giordano is the inker. Gaspar Saladino doing the lettering, and then Jerry Serpe doing the colors. And then consulting edits here like Roy Thomas and Julius Schwartz, Mark Wolfman, and E. Nelson Bridwell. So the stories are very tropey. We have miscommunication between the good guys, and there's a fight. And then eventually the good guys have to team up to defeat the bad guys. This time around, the good guys, of course, being Superman and Spider-Man, and the villains being Doc Ock and Lex Luthor, who escaped from prison. And now it is up to Superman and Peter Parker, or rather Spider-Man, to team up and take them down. And it did so well that they decided to do another one the following, well, in a couple of years. Now, if you're thinking, wait a minute, this is missing something, besides the DC Versus Marvel miniseries, that will be in the Amalgam Omnibus, because that does lead into the Amalgam series. The Wizard of Oz is what's missing. It predates the Superman Spider-Man story by a year. I believe it came out the year before that Superman Spider-Man story. So that's what's missing here, but the superheroes are what it's all about. I'm sorry if you were looking forward to The Wizard of Oz, the production by Marvel and DC Comics. So yes, superheroes team up, take down the bad guys, and you do have the forwards again by some of the original creators. Mark Wolfman writing the forward here for Superman and Spider-Man. And this time around, it's Jim Shooter doing the script, with a special thanks for Mark Wolfman for plot suggestions. You have John Buscema drawing this, like the pencils, with Terry Austin on inks. To me, I'm a huge fan of Terry Austin, so anytime he gets to finish or ink someone's pencils, I love it even more. And I love John Buscema, so this is the fight between Superman and Spider-Man. However, this time around, the Hulk gets brought into the story, as well as Wonder Woman, because those were the two popular TV shows at the time in the 70s. So both Marvel and DC agreed, okay, let's bring in some of the TV property, let's bring in the Hulk, and then have Wonder Woman get captured. And yeah, we'll see what else happens. And this is Doctor Doom and Parasite teaming up to cause havoc this time around. I love the extras that they have here from the Bullpen Gang. And then you have the next book right here, Batman versus the Incredible Hulk. I love the story behind this cover, because to me, when I think of Batman artists that are top of their game, like nobody can say anything bad about them, is Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, who does the illustrations here, Len Wein supplying the writing. Then you have, again, Dick Giordano, not only the editor, but also the embellisher, John Constanza, the letterer, and Glennis Wein, the colorist, but also consulting editors. And this one is unique because this is like, okay, we're just gonna pretend like we share the same world. It's no longer super special, but now Bruce Banner is working in this division of Wayne Research, and they're developing I think it's like a gamma ray gun. So that's what this is about at first. You know, you have the Hulk, or Bruce Banner turning into the Hulk, and then you have Bruce Wayne trying to take him down. This is the one with the Shaper of Worlds and the Joker team up. But at first you have to have the two heroes, fight. And what I said about Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, nobody correcting him, it's interesting to me because that's what happens exactly with that cover. I think it's back here, or maybe it's all the way in the back. Oh, no, here we go. Where he sketched out the cover, and then the editors would jump in like, okay, this doesn't look like the Hulk is that menacing. Can you change it? Or, okay, it looks great, but the foot looks a little bit awkward. Can you move his left foot? That's crazy to me. But I love that editors at that time, and I don't know if they still do, have that much input on artists. Like, hey, I need you to change this left leg, or the way that the right leg is bent looks awkward. And then, yes, the one that got me into this whole thing is oh my gosh, this storyline right here by Chris Claremont. Again, Terry Austin coming back on inks, but this time around it's Walter the Man Simonson drawing this. And, oh, dude, you're talking about the Dark Phoenix saga. Not the saga, but the Dark Phoenix character. You're talking about X-Men, and you're talking about Chris Claremont. And then on top of that, you throw in Darkseid and the New Teen Titans, who at the time were selling as many copies as Uncanny X-Men. This was a no-brainer. I remember when this came out. So a lot of these, by the way, were done in like Treasury edition size. This, I want to say, was the first comic that actually came out, because this one was published by Marvel, if I'm not mistaken. Because some were published by Marvel, some were published by DC. But this one was the first one that was published by Marvel that was an actual trim size of a single issue. So it was different. It wasn't a Treasury size. And oh my gosh, the team up here. Oh, and the they're so good. Yeah, and just seeing Walter Simonson draw these characters like Deathstroke the Terminator fighting Wolverine, and then of course the team up between Darkseid and the Dark Phoenix. I mean, enough said, right? Like, what else can I say about that? And then we fast forward a little bit. We go into the 90s because there wasn't another crossover in the 80s. And then we get Batman and Punisher. Now, this time around, it is Jean-Paul Vallée as Batman. So what do we call him? Badass? We don't call him Badass, do we? That's ridiculous. With that outfit, we have Jigsaw and the Joker teaming up. And it's both of those characters. But then we get Bruce Wayne back as Batman. And this time around, teaming up with the Punisher. And I think this is the one that's written. This is one by Chuck Dixon and John Romita Jr. and Klaus Janson. Tim Drake playing a big part in this. So the storylines that you're going to see through here vary in when they take place too. Sometimes they take place in present day during this time, like in the 70s or 80s or the 90s. Sometimes they take place in the past, as you're going to see through here. This is The Hunger, but it also features the characters of Novar, right? Like we have characters like Orion and Silver Surfer and the New Gods that will play a big part in this. This is one of my guilty pleasures. I still have the single issue. I just think it's drawn so badass. Because to me, Marvel's answer to the Joker was always Carnage. So when I heard about this, I was like, I don't know. I mean, who wrote this? This is J.M. DeMatteis, yeah. Mark Bagley, Scott Hanna, Mark Farmer, Richard Starkings. Oh, man. But when I heard about this team up, I was like, oh my gosh, how many times is Batman going to team up with somebody? This is, of course, during the time when Batman Spawn, Predator, Batman Punisher. But I had to pick this one up. I remember it had an embossed cover, too. Like, it was like the characters were embossed on the cover. But this is Carnage and the Joker teaming up. And maybe sharing a little more than the symbiote. Love that book. That's one of my favorites. And this is so good because Green Lantern at the time was being written by Ron Mars. And so was Silver Surfer. So Ron Mars coming in here. Darryl Banks, who was drawing Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner, co-created Kyle Rayner, is drawing this. And Terry Austin again coming in to ink this. Oh my gosh, my childhood brain was being blown during this time, man. It was such a great time. And a lot of it probably had to do, and I think you can read about it in the intros, a lot of it had to do with the way the market was going for comics. We had the big boom in the 90s of comics, and then we had the implosion where people were just buying up those #1 issues, and unfortunately, that didn't work out. And then we had the state of bankruptcies, and we had just companies folding over. So the big two got smart and decided, well, let's do something big, let's do something. And funny enough, this issue of Green Lantern and Silver Surfer, which also featured Thanos, by the way, amongst other characters like Parallax, leads, because this is the box, right? Leads into the DC Versus Marvel. This is the box that goes through interdimensions that you can step in. Yeah, as a matter of fact, look, the action continues in DC Versus Marvel 1 through 4 because of that box. But yes, the companies got together and thought, okay, let's save the industry and let's have some crossovers and let's have some fun. And that's what this was. Oh man, did I love this stuff. This is a Captain America issue right here with Superman, if I'm not mistaken, that kind of fits like that missing issue that was in that John Byrne Superman Batman Omnibus, if you have it, because it feels like it's one of those books that takes place at its different time. So it's like a golden age take on these characters. Like Dick Grayson as Robin, and you have Joker and Red Skull teaming up. But it really does feel like those Batman and Superman stories. I love Scott McDaniels, so you had him on the Batman and Daredevil comic. Hells yes. I believe this is the one that's written by D.G. Chichester, who both of them were working on the Daredevil book at the time. And then, of course, people probably knew him from, if you're coming from the DC world, you know of his art on Nightwing. And then you have Daredevil Batman. And then you have Batman and Spider-Man. This time around, it's drawn by Graham Nolan. And doesn't feature the character of Carnage, but it features the character of Ra's al Ghul, and teaming up with none other than the Kingpin. And of course, two villains like that just learning to trust each other gets kind of ridiculous. And you have the Superman Fantastic Four. This is one that I actually had to pick up in trade paperback. I never got to read it in single issues. Dan Jurgens doing the writing and art in here with Art Thibert on inks and Gregory Wright on colors. So it doesn't just feature the character of Superman, but also the entire Fantastic Four. And all of it written by Dan Jurgens. And you are going to see different characters from Dan Jurgens' run on Superman. I believe this is the one by Steve Rude, Roger Stern. And that is the Hulk versus Superman. I love this classic art style right here. And speaking of classic, that's the way this feels. Like you get to see the origin of these characters. And it feels like a timeless type of story. Like it could take place at any time. This is Batman and Daredevil. Alan Grant, Eduardo Barreto. And now featuring more characters than just Batman and Daredevil, but also Scarecrow and Catwoman, and a couple of other Marvel Easter eggs. So I haven't really gone over each and every one of these like thorough, like, oh, this is going to feature this, as much as I want to, especially that Teen Titans X-Men book. So here's your afterwards. You do have an afterwards by Ron Marz talking about how important that Uncanny X-Men New Teen Titans crossover was, because if it wasn't for that book, he would not be writing comics. And then you have an afterword here by Tom Brevoort, who actually talks about the person responsible for making a lot of this happen. And that is David Ops. And he tells you a little bit about who he was and what he was doing to kind of help put all this together. And you have, this is Making Comics history right here, Jerry Conway's original outline for the 1976 Superman, Spider-Man team-up, yet that started like a fight, and then became a team-up, and then the art of, I love that all of this is back here. You have original art from the different eras, and just some phenomenal artists that have graced these pages. A lot of them, unfortunately, no longer with us, but some are still here. Some of these wonderful creators are still here with us. It's so bad. I don't know if the color, I'd love to see a noir version of that. You know, when I was a kid, I wasn't the biggest fan of this story, but I think the older I got, and when I got to reread it a few years back, I really enjoyed it more. And so did The Hunger. I don't think I liked The Hunger when I was a kid. I thought The Hunger was, when I was a kid, I was like, what the hell would I want to read about Galactus and Darkseid? Those characters are lame. Man, little did I know. And then the older I got, the more I got into those characters. So the more I learned to appreciate them. So you're going to see original art before pencil, or before the inks, before the word bubbles, and then some of them are inked. And they tell you where they originated from. And like framing scenes right here, a little behind the scenes stories for these particular issues and pages. The initial cover concept, and then the revised cover with alterations. And this is the cover that you get, although I think they are using new colors for the Omnibus edition, but by the phenomenal George Perez. Yes, this one right here. And, oh, that's right. There was a total of 4 of these. Now, none of the... This is the Wildstorm era. None of those are collected in here. You don't have, like, Wildcats, X-Men, Gen X, and Gen 13, Team X, and Team 7. Alex Ross's The Homage cover. I'm glad that that's collected in here. And you have fold-out pages here, too. Superman Fantastic Four. It's the Virgin cover. And then a little bit of the behind-the-scenes layouts. This is the... Oh, okay. This is the John Byrne, a promotional poster for DC Versus Marvel crossovers. John Byrne, inked by Terry Austin. So you have this, which is the actual art on board. And then the back, well... just one side of it, showcasing the Marvel side. Surprised that they didn't put both of them on here, Marvel and DC. That's interesting. They just jump right over to the Batman Captain America, John Byrne. Little article here. Talking about the crossover, and yes, the Jim Lee cover right here without the spine, cutting into the middle of that artwork. So, full color direct market cover variant. And then on the other side is where you're going to see the pencils and the inked. And your end sheets. So, let's talk about the build and the book itself. Let's talk about the binding here. The book has 960 pages. It is sewn binding. The paper stock they're using is very similar to that paper stock that DC has been using in their latest Omnis. It's not quite the glossy paper stock that they used to use. It's more like a satin finish to it. But it's also not newsprint or matte paper. So it's if you've gotten DC Omnis in the last year, that's what this feels like. So as far as the way the book lays over, though, it is nice. There's really hardly any gutter loss happening. Look at that double page spread. And let me tell you, back in this first crossover, there are a lot of double page spreads for a book from 1976, which I didn't think, with double page spreads, I didn't think was really happening until like the early 80s. But just to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like. Now, with this paper stock, it is a little bit thinner than like the glossy paper stock that they used to use. So there's just a little bit of bleed through happening from the opposite side. Not very much. And you can see the borders here. As a matter of fact, I want to say like the borders themselves, and just to ease your mind, it is still bigger than the release on the trade paperback, right? Like the artwork, even with those big borders right there, the art is still bigger. Now, one thing I did notice, and I don't know if this is just my copy or not, but there was a unique, I don't know what to call it. Yeah, this little part right here, like Superman's face, it's a little blurry. I don't know why. I think it might be the scan, and it's not a big deal really, but I do want to be as thorough as possible when it comes to these overviews. So I did pull out the trade paperback, and this is what it's supposed to look like. It's just supposed to be shadows instead of that. Is that a deal breaker? Hell no! When's the next time we're going to get this? Maybe it's a deal breaker for one person, but oh my gosh. The only other thing, and this, please rest assured, this is just my copy, and it happens from time to time, are these tags right here, where the printer didn't cut my paper. So the pages right here have this extra, and it happens both at Marvel and DC. So it's not just a DC thing. And yeah, so it's just something I've fixed myself in the past. It's not a big deal to me, but it happens to happen in one of my favorite comics. But yeah, it's just something that the printer didn't cut. But that's it. That's what this book is about. You saw the artwork, talked a little bit about the stories. And yes, the stories are tropey as hell. But what's wrong with that? Tropey as hell works if you've got the right ingredients. If you've got the right talent. Oh my gosh. Yes, the superheroes fight at first, and then they team up to beat the villains. That sounds like something that happens all the time. Yeah. Who cares? When's the next time you're going to see Wolverine team up with Nightwing or Robin? Sorry, Robin at the time. When is the next time you're going to see Darkseid and Dark Phoenix teaming up with Walter Simonson and Terry Austin on artwork? The Punisher and Batman beat down the Joker. Like, what? Right. Enough said. Right. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more.
And that was the content, the page count, and build of this book. Let me know in the comments down below if you've picked it up, and if you are picking it up, which cover you ended up going with, and what your favorite book in here is. What was the one that was collected in here that made you think, oh my gosh, I remember when that came out, or I had to get it because of that big epic showdown. And then if you're going to pick up the DC versus Marvel, the Amalgam Era Omnibus. If you have any questions, leave them down below. And also, yeah, which cover did you get? The George Perez or the Jim Lee cover? Yes, any questions? Down below, smash that like button, check us out on Patreon and Spreadshop. Amazing ways to support the channel. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.